Hello and welcome to a 1v1 on Kholodny Ferma Winter. This game is going to be Retaliation versus GenOberst Guderian. If I pronounced that even close to correctly, probably not. Wow, look at this! Capwalking! This is an interesting technique that we've seen on the forums a couple times, I think, but this will be the first time I've actually seen it used in one of the games I capped, although he looks like he inadvertently made it to the second sector a little bit prematurely. We will note that it is not possible to capture 2 points at the same time. If it were possible, then that would probably be an exploit, or abuse, if you will. But because it's not, he actually kind of made a mistake there. The technique is to finish capturing that one before you fully enter the next sector, and by doing that you can cap a little bit more quickly than you otherwise would be able to by simply walking from sector to sector. So it looks like Retaliation is still working out exactly how to micro that just right, but we will note that it's interesting. It needs to be explored further, I think, by players. But good to see the attempt. Meanwhile, over here we do see Stern Pioneer Squad moving for the munitions point. No scouting or pushing by the supply half-track from Guderian, but we actually, wow, we will see a second Stern Pioneer Squad. Double Stern Pioneers is not particularly popular lately because of how badly they've been nerfed. Supposedly they haven't been nerfed, they've just been changed such that they do a lot less damage at range, but they're a lot more durable. At least that is what Relic has said, which is why their price was not adjusted, but I think everyone pretty much universally agrees that they have been nerfed. Their damage at range has just been reduced so much that they really just aren't nearly what they used to be. That being said, they still do the exact same amount of damage that they used to at extremely close range. It's just that the range at which they do that damage has been reduced from 8 to 3, and I believe that 8 is about the distance between this tractor and this house, whereas 3 would be more like the distance between the tractor and the fire. Roughly, that's a rough estimate. Riflemen continuing to push up here onto the munitions in the center. We do have Stern Pioneers moving down into the church. It looks like, yes, he will take up a position there. Retaliation building an early munitions cache on his cutoff. Very interesting. If we take a look at Retaliation's build, we will see that he's only got 2 rifleman squads, and he went with a second rear echelon troop squad. So he went rifleman, rear echelons, and then munitions cache. Interesting that it's munitions instead of a fuel cache. This is a build I haven't seen before in any of my casts, so I'm interested to see how it works out for him. By going with munitions instead of fuel, he will have 36 munitions coming in now. And if he can maintain control over the central victory point, he'll actually have a massive munitions advantage over his Oberkommando West opponent. And munitions control is really quite critical against the Oberkommando West because of their reliance on Panzerschrecks. And now that their munitions income has been reduced from 100% to 80%, that first Panzerschreck hits the field that much later, and with 14 coming in, he won't have it for several minutes still. If we take a look back at Retaliation again, as far as technology, we will see a lieutenant is being produced. Will be done very soon, and Retaliation does have 20 fuel as well. And we could see a utility car hitting the field probably around the 5-minute mark, so not as early as it could be, but still certainly respectable. The fuel, or the munitions cache, set him back for manpower just a little bit. Almost wiping that Stern Pioneer squad, but not quite managing it. Volley fire going out on the Stern Pioneers over here. But it looks like he won't be able to pin the squad. They'll probably actually break suppression and stand up. And I think the Stern Pioneers will actually win that engagement, unfortunately. Oh, and it looks like a full... No? Something died right there. Some riflemen did, I guess. No full squad down, though. Yes, the Stern Pioneers did win the engagement over here. Riflemen hold up in the church trying to push back these Volksgrenadiers, but unfortunately, at that range, they're probably going to lose this engagement, especially with that cover, and that does mean that the Oberkommando West player does have control of the single munitions point on this map, bringing the munitions incomes to about even, actually. We do have a push going down for the southern strategic point. Retaliation just sort of standing here with these 2 squads. I'm not sure what that's about. He's moving his lieutenants up here into yellow cover behind this fallen tree. will do very respectable damage to the one Volksgrenadier standing out of cover. Unfortunately, it's quite difficult to place a full squad behind cover sometimes. You have to kind of spam move orders until they're all positioned nicely. Although it can be difficult when you have such a narrow space to work with anyway. M20 is hitting the field, and with that munitions cache helping him out and no grenades thrown and no other upgrades or anything purchased, we will note that he has 126 munitions stored up, so that will be enough for 2 anti-tank mines. And surprisingly enough, his opponent has not gone with a Kubelwagen and will instead be rushing his mechanized regiment headquarters and activating fuel transfer. So we do see him with 15 fuel coming in despite not actually holding any of the fuel points. But that fuel transfer is going to reduce his munitions even more severely. Not necessarily the greatest idea when he still hasn't even purchased his first Panzerschreck, and if he does, that'll pretty much bring his munitions down to 0. Sturm Pioneers in the house actually wipe a rifleman squad here, though, so unfortunately Retaliation was too busy paying attention to his utility car, and our rifle squad does go down. We will have rear echelon troops moving up around towards the north. Utility car continuing to harass. And he still has not purchased armored skirts on the utility car, and we will note that that leaves it rather vulnerable to small arms fire. Sturm Pioneers in particular can actually do a lot of damage to a utility car if you're not quite ready for it. In fact, so much so that Retaliation felt the need to pop smoke there. Possibly he also suspected that Panzerschreck would be completing on these Volksgrenadiers soon, and indeed it is. It's pretty much a dead giveaway if Volksgrenadiers don't retreat. They're just sort of standing next to your utility car, and it seems like they're just taking unnecessary bleed. It's almost certainly because a Panzerschreck is about to complete, and he's gonna try and surprise you with that. So I think if you're paying close enough attention, you don't necessarily need to pop smoke until after the Schreck upgrade completes. If you react quick enough, I think you can pop the smoke before the rocket fires. But without armor skirts, one Panzerschreck shot would certainly have destroyed his utility car, so I think in that situation he was just playing it safe. He knows he has munitions to spare, decided to just pop the smoke and get out of there. So that's good. We do see Panzer Fusiliers hitting the field, so Doctrine has been selected by Guderian. He will be using breakthrough tactics. He's also revealed his Puma. Usually you don't want to reveal your Puma until you encounter the enemy's utility car, because as soon as you show that you have a Puma, it gives the utility car a moment to go plant mines and other things. Unfortunately, it looks like the Puma is going to be chasing that utility car very aggressively. And unfortunately, no mines were laid by the utility car, which I definitely think was a mistake, because Guderian clearly would have easily taken any bait, just diving recklessly into the utility car's smoke. Against a good player, that almost always means a dead Puma. But unfortunately, Retaliation just didn't plant a mine, which is surprising to me because he saw the Puma in the north with his rear echelon troops, and he didn't purchase armor skirts, so I thought that he was saving his munitions for the mine, but apparently not. And we actually have Recon Doctrine being chosen, and I see this getting chosen a lot, and I think the reason is because the Greyhound is such an effective counter to the Kubelwagen, and the airdropped combat group is actually not half bad either as far as being very munitions efficient, allowing you to use your munitions on other upgrades and artillery. Off-map artillery, the INR Pathfinders are actually extremely effective. In fact, the most effective off-map artillery in the game. But it looks like yet another infantry unit is going to be lost by Retaliation, and he actually throws that Greyhound away, diving right into the Puma. Unfortunately, the Puma really is not very susceptible to being circle-strafed. Its turret rotation speed is just too fast, as is its firing rate. And unfortunately, it looks like this is not going very well for Retaliation, losing another infantry squad and both of his light vehicles. And the M8 is not cheap. I think I've mentioned this in my casts before. That 40 fuel price tag is just absurdly high for the tiny, pathetic amount of damage that it does. If we look back at the Puma, I think it landed 3 shots on that Puma and probably did almost the same amount of damage as the riflemen and bar shooting at it did, if not less. So The main gun on the Puma or on the Greyhound is really just really bad. In fact, it has the same. I was told this by Bulgakov on the forums. It has the same gun as the Stuart, but it does half the damage, even though it is literally the same gun. So for some reason, they just thought they should have its damage. I almost think that might be a bug or an oversight or something. It just doesn't make any sense for it to be so bad, but it is what it is. Puma encountering some rear echelon troops here on the right side. It is important to try to keep the rear echelon squads alive. Sometimes it can be tempting to just not pay attention to them anymore because they're so combat ineffective, but mostly in 1v1s anyway, they're so important to keep alive for their continued map harassment ability. They're so cheap that having them around to move around, capturing territory unopposed in areas where your opponent just can't be bothered to send any troops to defend is really quite critical. In fact, just the fact that they're keeping the Puma occupied just by sticking it up in this house means that the Puma is not going to be down here to stop the actual infantry force from contesting this harassment. Whereas if the Puma were down here, it would give a considerable advantage to these Oberkommando West infantry. Guderian doesn't appear to be paying. Oh, he was paying attention and he threw a grenade, but I think that was definitely a mistake on his part because that grenade had basically no chance of winning the engagement for him. And he's already incredibly strapped for munitions, only 15 coming in right now. If he were to lose a Panzerschreck squad, it would be absolutely disastrous, to say the very least. But he has taken the central munitions point back, something to keep in mind. This is one of the very few 1v1 maps, in fact, that has only one munitions point in the center, which makes it quite difficult for Oberkommando West to get their Panzerschrecks out if they can't hold that point. Especially if they're going to be using fuel transfer for the entirety of the game. That being said, because he went Mechanized Regiment headquarters, he's not really relying on Panzerschrecks or anti-tank as much as he's relying on this Puma. The Puma is, of course, extremely effective in its role. Probably one of the most effective vehicles in the game in a light anti-tank role. In fact, I don't even think it's probably. I think it's far and away the best light vehicle in the game in an anti-tank role. I can't even really think of one that is comparable except for maybe the Stuart, but the Stuart doesn't even come close to the Puma's effectiveness. Shell shock is, of course, a nice ability. Point blank shot is, however, not that good, whereas aimed shot can honestly give the Puma the ability to win engagements against medium tanks, maybe even heavy tanks, which is really just amazing. Coaxial machine gun also does quite respectable damage versus infantry, as we can see here. Rifleman taking heavy damage, almost losing that full squad, but it looks like we actually have bazookas being researched very heavily by Retaliation, and I think we are now seeing why he built that munitions cache early on. He intends to just spam a massive amount of bazookas, and Guderian just was not at all ready for that massive amount of sheer firepower. And even though so many shots missed, it just didn't matter. If we take a look, that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bazookas being fielded right now. So that was more than enough to destroy that Puma. And we actually do have a Stuart hitting the field, and that Stuart is definitely going to have field dominance with that Puma destroyed. Lieutenant encountering some Panzer Fusiliers down here in the left side of the map. Deep snow kind of messes with their ability to maneuver, unfortunately. Stern Pioneers encountering some rear echelon troops over here. These rear echelon troops hitting Vet 2, so they will be up to a potentially 5-man squad now. And rear echelon troops have almost no anti-infantry capability left. Not that they really had much to begin with. But the Stuart is going to move up to support and should be able to clear out that building soon. The Stuart is actually quite accurate against infantry, even at range. So unlike the utility car, which you really have to bring into a very close range to be combat effective, the Stuart is very nice at medium or even long ranges, occasionally surprising you with just really lucky shots. Of course, it does come down to random chance, but there you go. One shot killing 2 men, even on the retreat, is very possible. Continuing to chase, but unfortunately it was not meant to be. We do have another Puma hitting the field, which is pretty much critical to this strategy. But I think that Retaliation is using pretty much the perfect counter to this strategy by just spamming a massive amount of bazookas. The Stuart being used to support with Shell Shock will of course be extremely effective should that Puma position itself too dangerously close to the giant blob of bazookas, which it looks like it may be doing. Shell Shock activated, crew stunned, 2 bazooka shots do connect, the next volley could destroy it, and there it is, the captain wipes it out. That Puma just got way too aggressive. I don't know what he was thinking. Chasing after a Stuart with a captain in a building is suicide, as you can clearly see. Meanwhile, down here we do have Panzer Fusiliers holding the fuel, riflemen taking up a position behind the fence here. Lieutenant moving down from the north. If he doesn't retreat that squad, he risks losing it. Taking damage from the Lieutenants Thompson and Barr at range. Lieutenant will chase. And pre-patch, that squad would be pretty much guaranteed dead. And so that's how much his DPS has been nerfed. Not that I think it necessarily should be guaranteed dead. I think that the Thompson being toned down was certainly justified. The Lieutenant was absurdly powerful before. Now he's really only just a tiny bit better than Rifleman, really. But he's actually cheaper to reinforce than Rifleman, thanks to a bug. So he's actually the most cost-efficient squad you can get in the early/mid game.
This is it.
The bar nerf, on the other hand, was totally ridiculous. Hopefully that will get reverted because it's, as it stands, absurdly cost-ineffective to buy. 60 munitions for a really very minor increase in DPS. In fact, somebody posted, wow, look at that. I wasn't watching that Stern Pioneer squad. Stuart wiped it with just a few lucky shots. Lieutenant does catch some Volksgrenadiers here, but as I was saying, somebody mentioned on the forums that if a Fallschirmjäger squad picks up a bar, its DPS actually goes down over their standard FG-42s. They actually get worse. So that is the extent to which the bar has been nerfed. Panzer Fusiliers moving up here. They do catch a Stuart along with Rakettenwerfer support. Fortunately, the Stuart manages to get clear before the Panzer Fusiliers can hit it with an anti-tank rifle grenade, damaging its engine, but a pretty hefty force is moving up here in the middle. Bazookas firing away at the Panzer Fusiliers, but it doesn't get any lucky hits. However, the captain is moving up into close range, and he is Vet 3, so he's actually pretty durable now. Or, maybe not durable, but has a good weapon accuracy. And these riflemen are also doing a good job of focusing them down, and those Panzer Fusiliers will be forced to retreat. However, Guderian has done a good job maintaining control of the right side, or north fuel. But now that Retaliation's infantry is moving up, he may lose his hold on it. Take a look at resources. Guderian has spent quite a lot of fuel, actually, on Pumas. So unfortunately, he's not going to be able to field any real high-tech solutions to all of Retaliation's infantry, at least not for a while, and he's relying quite heavily on Panzer Fusiliers instead. And because of his horribly crippled munitions income, pretty much this entire game, he hasn't been able to afford anything, really. Just one Panzerschreck at this point, as far as upgrades. No G43s. No mines anywhere, I don't think. Just slowly ticking up. His Jagdtiger's been unlocked, but he's nowhere near being able to call that in because of the 140 fuel that he's spent on Pumas.
Area secure. Hold the position.
Riflemen are definitely going to lose this engagement. Retaliation correctly retreats. The Stuart is moving up to push those Stern Pioneers back. Hopefully Guderian will notice this time, but honestly those Stern Pioneers are so overextended and unsupported that even if he retreats immediately, I'm not sure he'll get away if Retaliation decides to chase. They're also in a rather clumped formation. Oh, why didn't he chase? He definitely should have there. I think he could have wiped that. Unfortunately, he chose not to. Major is setting up, hitting the field and setting up a retreat point here. And Retaliation is actually going to evacuate the medics and move them up to push with these squads. Interesting. Which will, because this is not crewed, he won't be able to reinforce his wounded squads. I think that may have been a misclick, actually. This is now moving back. Moving up here is the lieutenant and riflemen. And it looks like we have a lot of resource flow from Guderian here. He really needs to spend some of his manpower on something. It looks like he's waiting for his Schwer Panzer headquarters to complete, but I think he probably should have brought that in a lot earlier. I suspect that he probably could have, considering it's been 20 minutes. Maybe he's planning on bringing in Obersoldaten. I don't know. Oh, a full squad went down somewhere. I'm not sure where. Maybe right here. I guess I just missed it. The lieutenant's taking heavy damage in red cover here now that the car's been destroyed. But he will make it away. Captain firing on various things here. Pretty sturdy defense being set up. Volksgrenadiers in the house. Raketenwerfer screening against a head-on push at least. Panzer Fusiliers as well. And unfortunately, Retaliation hasn't been sending any forces up here around the north to retake any of these areas, which he definitely could, but actually, his rear echelon troops have been converted into pretty heavy-duty combat troops. Ooh, Pathfinder artillery being brought in on that Raketenwerfer, and it's actually completely destroyed. So that's something to take note of there. That Pathfinder already really does land quickly enough to destroy completely, like to the point it can't even be recruited, a team weapon. So even though it's kind of expensive, 140 munitions, it's something to consider, something to keep in mind, that if you really need to take out a team weapon, it can get the job done because it drops quite quickly and does very nice damage in a very tight spread. Missions point is being contested quite heavily. Schwer Panzer headquarters is up though, screening against this push ever so slightly. More Pathfinder artillery is going to get called in. Oh, that was nothing happened. What was that? Oh, I didn't actually realize it. I didn't even know that INR Pathfinders had access to a decoy barrage. Wow, that's cool. That has an incredibly long cooldown though. For a second I thought that his major had done that, but his major's not high enough vet to do that. I have never seen that used before. That was nice. I don't think it really accomplished anything, but it's good to know. Certainly it's cheap, so there's hardly even any reason not to do it. Why not? Sherman hitting the field. That's a Stuart, but the Sherman is hitting the field, making its way up to the front line. Probably going to be, throwing high explosive rounds on there. He does have the munitions to upgrade it with a 50 caliber machine gun, but it looks like he's going to opt not to, instead saving his munitions up for further INR Pathfinder barrages. Sherman's just going to dive head first into the combat. Unfortunately, the Raketenwerfer has been recruited, and his Sherman will be forced to move back. And one of his infantry squads just got wiped somewhere. Not sure what just happened. Looks like riflemen, I guess. Oh no, his INR Pathfinders. Ooh, that hurts, actually. Not that much. They're only 210 manpower, actually, to replace, so I guess that's not the end of the world. But he will need to bring those back in. If he wants to continue calling down artillery, major artillery is actually sufficient to bring down a building if a building is proving difficult enough for you to break through. But that's pretty much the only thing major artillery is good for. Stuart moving up onto some Panzer Fusiliers over here on the right. We also have a Sherman moving up to fire on some Volksgrenadiers in the house. So they are forced to evacuate, and more Panzer Fusiliers moving over to defend the fuel from that Stuart. But we do see a nice harassment by these rear echelon troops on the left side, or the northwest victory point. If we take a look at Guderian again, he is just floating like crazy as far as manpower. I assume he must be saving up for a Jagdtiger, But he's really not even remotely close to being able to bring one in. Still several minutes away, even with his fuel transfer activated. So he really needs to spend that manpower, just field more units. He needs to bring in more stuff.
We are back to combat strength. Enemy trying to suppress. Rounds cracking overhead.
In particular, I'm really surprised not to see more Oversoldaten. But I guess, I don't know, maybe he just doesn't know what he wants to purchase. Retaliation continuing to move up. Grenade going out on those riflemen, inflicting very little damage. Panzer Fusiliers will be forced away. Retaliation also making its way back to the front lines. I think that those riflemen will probably be forced away by these Sturm Pioneers.
GenOberst, protect the flank.
Yes, there they go. Harassment happening over here on the victory points. Victory points are still pretty even, but the American is going to want to get those down soon. Once you get past 30 minutes, things will begin to get very difficult. Even if you've had map control the entire time, which he hasn't, but he's doing pretty well for map control at least. Unfortunately, the Sherman is just not having as dramatic of an impact as it needs to. The first few minutes when it's on the field and has total field dominance are when you really need to be utilizing it as heavily as possible, vetting it up and trying to just slam your enemy, especially his infantry, as hard as you possibly can. Unfortunately, it hasn't really done much of anything. Panzer Fusiliers forced away. The blizzard also kind of taking its toll on American squads. These Volksgrenadiers continue to just camp this house.
Report the weather is lifting. Stand by for confirmation.
Grenade going out on rear echelon troops. Pretty nice one. I really hope he notices that. It would be a shame to lose this double bazooka squad. Oh no! He just gave a bazooka to a Vet 5. Oh geez, that is disastrous. Looks like Pathfinder artillery getting called in on the house, and it is finally destroyed. He probably could have destroyed it with major artillery though, for 20 munitions cheaper, and much earlier. He had really decided that that was necessary.
Good to go here.
Casualty reports are flooding in. Units are losing men to the cold.
And this is the perfect example of the Stuart just being really effective at range, picking units off, and kiting those infantry or baiting them into a squad wipe. Unfortunately, they're so durable at Vet 5. We actually do have a Scot hitting the field. He really needs to move that INR Pathfinder next to the fire. He could lose that squad. There he goes. Good for him. Scott trying to wipe the squad, but unfortunately it does not succeed. Captain taking heavy damage from a Panther, which is just recently hitting the field, and like I mentioned before, if that Stuart had actually been utilized for the several minutes that was on the field, he probably could have inflicted heavy losses on his opponent, particularly over here. Maybe if he had circled around and flanked, he could have done some damage to other things. In particular, if he had circled up around this way, he probably could have done heavy damage on the Mechanized Regiment headquarters, or gone into the base, destroyed this, and possibly gotten some squad wipes on wounded infantry. But really it didn't do anything. And now that there's a Panther on the field, it's not really going to have very much presence on the map, because any time he tries to use it, there's a decent chance that it will just get pushed away by this Panther. Volksgrenadiers taking damage, Sherman taking damage from the Panther, grenade being thrown at those rear echelons. Oh, it's just perfectly aimed. Volksgrenadier grenades are actually extraordinarily difficult to dodge. For some reason, the throw animation and travel speed of the projectile and everything just make it one of the harder grenades to dodge, even though it has the same fuse as pretty much all grenades, I think. And the Americans getting pushed hard here. That Panther is going to make it really very difficult for him to use any of his armor.
Line just got cut off.
He's also getting unusually aggressive with his Scott, taking damage from the bazooka and Panzer Shrek. Fortunately, a Raketenwerfer shot missed. If it had not, that Scott would be dead. This Volksgrenadier squad getting a little overextended, trying to kill the Scott. It does succeed. Sherman is trying to finish the squad off, but it looks like it's going to get away. And that just goes to show that those Vet 5 durability boosts are just really difficult to contend with. Meanwhile, over here, Lieutenant getting shot at by Panzer Fusiliers in the house. Riflemen also need to keep moving, standing idle. We do have an AT gun hitting the field, so that will help push the Panther back, although it certainly won't be all that effective at necessarily chasing and killing it. Retaliation does have 160 fuel in the bank, which he probably should be using to purchase the Jackson as soon as he has the manpower to do so. The Stuart, fortunately, is still on the field. Unfortunately, it was not present for the engagement down here in the south. The Panther actually fell to half health. Maybe if the Stuart had been there to assist, he could have thrown shell shock or engine damage on it. Possibly destroyed the Panther. Those rear echelons are definitely playing it a little close to the chest. Being in that church, any bazooka or Panzerschreck shot threatens bringing the building down. Riflemen forced to retreat. The Panther is fully repaired, and it's making its way back up to the front lines with Raketenwerfer support. The Stuart, fortunately, was retreated well in advance of the Panther's arrival. And if he still had his other rear echelon troop squad equipped with bazookas, he'd have a slightly stronger anti-tank presence. But unfortunately, he does not. Captain being forced away here. Panther moving down with a pretty heavy amount of infantry support, and if we take a look at Guderian's resources, it's really just getting absolutely out of control. 1,500 manpower banked, almost, and now that he's purchased a Panther, there's no sign of him ever, probably for the rest of this game, bringing any Ag Tiger. I just don't understand what he's thinking. Why has he not spent it? He obviously must know how much manpower he has. There's no way he's gone for 8 minutes without noticing what his resources are at. Why isn't he bringing in a Sturmoffizier? Why isn't he bringing in more Fusiliers, more Volksgrenadiers, more Raketenwerfers? Some Sturm Pioneers maybe for repairs, anything. Obersoldaten. Squad gets wiped here. INR Pathfinder is actually being used to cap, which is a little dangerous because they have extraordinarily low health and they're just so overextended. These Sturm Pioneers and Panzer Fusiliers could probably wipe them on retreat. Fortunately, they went around this way instead of circling around the other direction. We actually have a pretty aggressive push on the Panther. Rifle grenade going off from the riflemen down here. Shell shot going out as well. Sherman moving up to assist. Rear echelon troops moving up here in an attempt to flank, but it looks like they're just not going to be able to maneuver up there quickly enough, and these screening Volksgrenadiers and other infantry are going to prove a little bit too much. Retaliation decides to pull back.
Operations advises a severe cold front is moving in. Prepare for possible blizzard conditions.
More healing and reinforcement happening here. AT gun moving up. Raketenwerfer is going to meet it. Panzer Fusiliers positioning themselves to decrew. We do have a Jackson here, finally hitting the field, so that's good to see. Hopefully that will be effective against the enemy Panthers. Sherman being mobilized to counter that 4 Panzer Fusiliers up here. And Guderian's munitions just continue to creep up. which is why he still has no G43s. We will see that a second Panzerschreck has been purchased, but I think that's pretty much it as far as his munitions expenditures go.
Send your orders!
Riflemen getting killed by these Volksgrenadiers here. They will be forced to retreat. Meanwhile, we also have the Jackson, or the Panzer Fusiliers over here taking the victory point once again. The victory points have been so back and forth over the course of this game that they're still quite even and still quite high. Both of them still have quite a lot to work with. Very little pressure on either team to execute here. They both still have time to think and strategize about what would be the best thing to do. It looks like the Sherman and Stewart are going to move in on the Panther here with Jackson support. Nice shot on the Panther there. We also see some infantry getting taken out, I think. Yes, the lieutenant got hit by the Panther there, but the Panther will be pulled back to safety, and these vehicles are going to simply focus down the infantry in the house. Sherman doesn't do quite as much damage using AP rounds, but it will be sufficient to force a retreat. Another push by Retaliation towards the south area. And this is really just getting... This is just absurd float. This is just... It's ridiculous, really. It's such an egregious amount that it's almost... It's almost amazing that it's even possible that Guderian is doing so well. When the American is spending his resources quite quickly. Guderian has barely spent a dime for the last 10 minutes. And yet he's really bullying the American off the map. He's going to be hitting 2,000 manpower soon. And I've been saying for a long time that he's nowhere close to a Jagdtiger, and with 25 fuel coming in, he's 3 minutes away from a Jagdtiger now. So at the 40-minute mark, it will be hitting the field, and once it does, I think there really won't be anything the American player can do. His Jacksons and all of his armor will be rendered effectively incapable of pushing. And it's already quite difficult with just 2 Panzerschrecks and a Raketenwerfer, since all American vehicles are quite fragile. Not to mention, this manpower bleed from the blizzard is not helping the Americans' income in the least.
Return to normal operations.
And at this point, it's almost looking like the American player just isn't sure what to do, having trouble executing a good push. And I think one of the biggest problems is that he sends all of his infantry one way, and then sends his vehicles another. And that makes it almost impossible to micro, to be honest. Microing the American late game is already a nightmare as it is without splitting your army in half. Fortunately, this Panther is caught incredibly overextended. We have point-blank shot going out on the engine, cruise shot going in, or shell shot going in for the stun. The Sherman moves up with the armor-piercing rounds, and the Jackson is able to focus it down from range. And that Raketenwerfer didn't even react at all. So, nice play, nice execution there by those American vehicles. And this trio is actually quite a deadly combo against a lone Panther. Of course, a trio of probably any 3 vehicles in the game would be a pretty deadly combo against any 1 vehicle in the game, as long as they were of roughly the same weight class. So still, the synergy between the Stewart and other armor is undeniable with shell shock. Lieutenant is taking damage. Captain, he actually retreats to mitigate the damage from that grenade a little bit, assuming he would be able to win the engagement with his other squads, and he's correct. It's actually pretty smart of him, I think, to minimize his manpower lead as much as possible. We actually will note that Guderian has purchased not a Jagdtiger, but a King Tiger. Interesting. Very interesting. I was really expecting a Jagdtiger, but apparently not. 1,600 manpower. He has so much manpower. That's after purchasing a King Tiger. I just can't believe how incredibly cost-effective the Oberkommando West Army is. I try to keep my balanced opinions out of my casts, so I guess I'll not say anything else about that, but good God. Retaliation moving up, firing on... Oh, wow, what an incredible crush maneuver there. Guderian really needs to retreat, but I guess he just wasn't paying attention. Paying too much attention at trying to hunt down that Sherman. Oh, very lucky break for Retaliation there, getting a main gun destroyed critical instead of being abandoned or engine damaged or literally any other critical, which would have been certain death. This Reckenwerfer is pushing super aggressively. That Sherman is proving to be pretty effective bait, convincing his opponent, Guderian to run his entire army straight into the American blob. Fortunately, with Vet 5, they're still so durable. He evacuates the Sherman to drop aggro. Lots of fire going down on that Sherman, but eventually he's taking too much damage and is forced to retreat. But Retaliation really needs to equip high explosive rounds on his tanks to maximize his damage output against those Volksgrenadier squads. If he can't wipe any of those squads, they're just going to continue dominating his armor. Especially considering that they have that tiny bit of extra AT in the form of the stolen bazooka. King Tiger does hit the field, and it looks like it's headed straight for the enemy Stuart, which is actually not even crewed at the moment. And if the first shot connects, it could wipe the crew and leave that Stuart to be stolen. We'll see if Retaliation does react in time. Oh, fortunately the shot hit the Stuart itself. He should probably just retreat the crew. No, don't do that. Oh, jeez. This crew. That was a Vet 3 Stuart crew, so probably at least a Vet 1 or Vet 2 Jackson. What a shame. He should have retreated the crew. Probably even worthwhile to give that Stuart to the enemy just to save that crew. Because a Stuart is really very little threat to a Jackson and 2 Shermans. It was definitely not worth it to try to escape at that point. Oh well. The American is doing very nicely for map control here. I think Guderian is kind of struggling to maintain map control, just sort of blobbing his infantry towards the enemy tanks. Oh, massive damage inflicted on the enemy captain there. But because of, once again, the crippled munitions income for pretty much the entire game, the King Tiger is not able to afford a pintle-mounted machine gun. The captain is going to go down there. We'll see Sherman's being forced back by the anti-tank weapons there, and the King Tiger is now moving up to spearhead a push on pretty much the entire American army, and I really don't know if Retaliation is equipped to counter this. Maybe if he brings down some artillery, but he doesn't have any INR Pathfinders on the field at the moment. We actually have a Jackson circling all the way around the back, though. Very nice flank by that Jackson. There's absolutely no anti-tank available to counter here in the rear, which is going to bring that King Tiger down dangerously quickly. However, both Shermans will be destroyed by the Volksgrenadiers, and it looks like that King Tiger's in a dangerous position, and the Jackson manages to take it out. Very nice flank by that Jackson. That was huge. That will bring down the enemy King Tiger.
We lost an anti-tank gun.
Rather close to losing that Volksgrenadier squad, but it will get clear. Ambulance also in a dangerous position. Looks like some attempt to chase is happening here. A bazooka got dropped by something. American infantry also taking heavy damage, and the AT gun will get cleared, and it looks like assault artillery is being... or no, sorry. That's just the Major's Vet 3, but he definitely does not have the munitions for assault artillery. I don't know why I even thought that was possible. Jackson hiding out over here. Wow, that was a huge engagement. We actually have a Greyhound getting called in. Oh, look at that late game canister round. Look at that. That's actually not a bad idea, I think, to get some squad wipes on harassing infantry. Of course, it is 40 fuel. Kind of expensive, but it's actually very manpower inexpensive, and I think that Retaliation has a little bit of a surplus of fuel, not so much manpower, so I think I agree with that choice. In fact, having wiped a Vet 4 Panzer Fusilier squad, I would say that it already paid for itself. So, interesting strategic decision there. I think I agree with it. I think that paid off. I think it already paid off. Hopefully it'll pay off even further.
We're losing a capture point.
That being said, the American is just desperate at this point. It's good that he destroyed the King Tiger, but honestly, if Guderian would just literally just spend his resources and like move toward the enemy, he would win. If he just clicked the Panzer Fusilier button and then clicked this spot on the map for the rest of the game, he would almost certainly win. I don't understand what he's doing. I can't believe he won't spend his resources. It doesn't make any sense to me at all. Another devastating canister round. Look at the effectiveness of this unit. Okay, he should definitely chase that. There's not much to screen. Oh, never mind. There is a Vet 5 Shrek squad. Still, I think if he had chased, he probably could have wiped that. That was not bad. Jackson's being retreated a little bit. Trying to be a little bit more conservative here. Rear echelon's trying to maintain control of a victory point. Riflemen harassing here, more riflemen harassing there, so correctly prioritizing the victory points over anything else. Very important once you fall below 100 to focus on clock control over resource control. And I have to say that the American is just much more on point about spending his resources. I guess that just goes without saying. Goes without saying at this point. Another canister round, possibly. Looks like a preemptive retreat, and he's going to not canister round after all. I'm not sure if he even activated the ability.
Are now down to 200 points.
It's actually somewhat amusing that Shrek and Bazooka Squad just retreated from a light vehicle there, which is already Vet 2, by the way, having been on the field for maybe only 90 seconds. He could have 4 Obersoldaten squads, in addition to what he currently has right now. Something to think about. Retaliation moving up. Oh, wow. I didn't realize the canister round was so effective even at medium range, but apparently it is. Sometimes it appears to do nothing, but apparently Retaliation has figured out how to get the most out of that ability, because every single usage I've seen has been devastating. That's a 50 munitions ability, though, so it certainly comes with a price. More harassment continues here. Rear echelons harassing this victory point once again. Unfortunately, there's still 190 points remaining for the Oberkommando West player, so it's going to be a long time before Retaliation is able to get that clock down. If he does at all. Panzer Fusiliers being forced away. A new Scott is actually being produced, which is an interesting decision. Hopefully it'll work. They're certainly not very good in blizzards because they just can't see anything. Oh, I think he just lost his bazookas. Yes, he did. There are just bazookas littering the field. I'm pretty surprised that Panzer Fusiliers are not making any attempt to take them.
Send your orders. Capture complete. Area secure. God damn it! Someone get us out of here!
We see pretty frantic play by the American, sending his squad scrabbling for territory pretty much all over the map, whereas the Oberkommando player is almost just lazy in his play at this point, just kind of standing around, not spending his resources. He's almost gotten himself back down to 3 digits. Almost. Thanks to the purchase of what appears to be a Panther. And I'm pretty sure he's had fuel transfer on for the entire game. Oh, we actually do see that the Panzer Fusiliers have finally recovered a bazooka there. I believe this one's still on the ground, though. Major taking pretty nasty damage there. will be forced to retreat, but those Sturm Pioneers are also going to need to get out of there. Riflemen maintain their hold on this victory point.
Steady yourselves!
Unfortunately, it looks like another squad went down here in the south. I'm not sure what it was, though. Something. Another Sherman gets sent onto the field, but it's really struggling against these vetted anti-tank infantry. And Oberkommando West is really the only faction I can think of that can actually fight tanks with just infantry. Oh, wow, look at that. That was a lucky shot. That was at probably maximum range. If he doesn't retreat that, he could... Ooh, just being inattentive, but I guess it doesn't really matter all that much. He has a Panther on the field fighting off everything up here. Rakettenwerfer also is going to force back the Scott there. Although the Panzer Fusiliers also got wiped. But he will be slowly retaking control of the north. Still, if we just take a look at the armies, GenOberst, Guderian. Well, I guess they're. I guess the American really has a huge advantage as far as armor support goes. He does have 2 Jacksons, a Sherman, his Vet 2 Scott, a pretty impressive array of vehicles. But wait, what? What? I don't know who won this. I don't know who won this game. I think if we follow this game to its logical conclusion, the American probably lost. Somebody must have disconnected. Okay, well, that's surprising, but I think the American was gonna lose. I think. It's kind of hard to say because Guderian's refusal to spend his resources and horrible microing of his infantry kind of leads me to believe that it's possible that a huge American armored push could have just about wiped everything Guderian had left and made a push for the base buildings and destroyed them. That being said, that's a lot of manpower to burn through. He looked like he was struggling and getting pushed back. I don't know. I think I would have to say that the American was going to lose this one. I think this one would have gone to Guderian, despite his absurd amount of resource float. Either way, I think that this was a well-played battle by both sides. I think it was interesting. Some interesting decisions made. Certainly made me think, especially about the Greyhounds. Canister round ability. Good use of that Jackson, certainly. Very nice execution against that King Tiger, despite losing both of his Shermans, which is certainly costly, but probably economically, overall, I think he won out in that engagement. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please send me your replays, and I'd be happy to do a cast for you. Otherwise, thank you for watching.